members acknowledge and pay respect to the traditional custodians of the land and waters, the Nurrungeri people, whose ancestral lands are on which we meet today. We acknowledge the deep feelings of attachment and relationship of Aboriginal people to country, pay our respects to elders past and present. We also extend that respect to all First Nations people. Thank you, everyone. Item 1 is apologies, and I'm putting Councillor Peach down as a late arrival. At this stage, I understand he's on within minutes of the chamber. The next item. The number 2, item 2 is the draft 2023-24 annual business plan and budget, receipt of written submissions and summary of community engagement. Councillors, welcome, Councillor. You will note that Council has received 4 written submissions to attach to this agenda and agenda report in relation to this budget and business plan. The recommendation 2, any amendments to this business plan and budget arising from written submissions be included in a report be presented to Council at its ordinary meeting on the 27th of June. I understand that some people want to have some debate around this, so I'm in your hands whether we should have 10 minutes discussion on governance of this or whether someone wishes to move the recommendation.
I think we need discussion. If you would like to remind us of our obligations, that's fine, but I think we need a discussion at some point.
Okay, so can we start with councillors need to receive, break it up into 2 parts actually. There's a recommendation. We do need to receive the written submissions, and I probably need to, someone could move that way first, perhaps is the appropriate way.
I'm happy to receive the written submission.
As a separate thing, in item 1, Councillor Bland, thank you. You're a seconder. Councillor O'Hara, I'm going to go with. So, Ben, you want to speak to your motion about receiving?
No. At this point in time, I'm happy to hear the discussion.
Okay. Well, I acknowledge that there was also a report around all the meetings, the 5 meetings we had. I acknowledge that. Also the 4 that wrote written submissions. Councillor O'Hara, you want to add? Anyone else want to deal with that particular motion?
I would just add that the comments or the summary reflects the information that has been passed on to me through ratepayers. I think the ones that couldn't attend the meetings for whatever reason, certainly some people had said they didn't know it was on. And feel that after speaking to an elected member, that's them having given feedback. So they still consider what they're saying to us as their form of feedback as well.
Okay. I suppose, councillors, you've discussed it with me for a fair bit around this process. Probably we need to work out whether we can come back to, after this year's 5 separate meetings, to 1 meeting on 1 night. Given the time of year, it's always awkward, and perhaps that needs to be advertised months ahead, months and months and months ahead, perhaps even in the rates notice, so that people who feel that they missed their opportunity will have a chance to be ready for it. That's probably what I'm reflecting on out of the process of the 5 meetings. I thought it was reasonably good feedback on the nights, had them, how that went, but not many people were there. Okay, is there anyone else wish to speak for or against what is part 1 of the recommendation in your agenda, councillors?
I just think, Mr. Mayor, I think it's just straightforward because all we're accepting is the report that's been given to us regarding what happened at those meetings. All it's asking at this stage.
Yep. Well, we have to deal with. Yep. Anyone else wish to comment on those submissions or? Being not, you're going to close, councillor. Okay, so the motion is that council formally receive the 4 written submissions attached to the agenda report in relation to the draft 23-24 annual business plan and budget. All those in favour? Those against, that's carried. You? Okay, item 2, which has given some contention, yes.
Sorry, Mayor, just really, will a response be given to these people that submitted in writing? How's that managed? Okay, great, thank you.
Is any amendments to this is the recommendation from staff, I might add, the 23-24 annual business plan and budget arising from the written submissions, include in a report to be presented to council at its ordinary meeting to be held on the 27th of June. Our ordinary meeting, as you know, council has been deferred, so we can deal with the budget on the same day and it'll be a fairly full agenda. At this stage, if you wish to make, I will call it adjustments stage to the budget, we probably need to have a discussion around this process. Not even reading that one there. If council proposes to adopt its annual business plan with amendments, then a statement must be included in the amended annual business plan. I'm reading this from the bottom of your agenda, page 3, setting out any significant amendments to the draft annual business plan and providing reasons for those amendments.
So through you, Mayor, will the amendments as we're going through them, or the ideas as we go through them, will they be documented and minuted?
At some point, I would think tonight you'd want to formalise it in a motion. If you wish to make amendments to the plan, that was, I emphasise that word significant. I'd be interested in a
I guess,
interpretation on that.
do I need to write them down as they're being said so that, or they be listed as we go along?
Well, at some point, the councillors would need to vote on it.
My question is, so that we know what we're actually suggesting here, should they be written down on the screen so we can see what we're proposing and we can remove them? Otherwise I'm just going to type them here regardless, so that we've
Well,
got a copy.
if you wanted to lead with what you believe are amendments to the process, and they can be either on the expenditure or the income side, I'm going to let, with the councils, not the resolution, the floor, with how much to permission of the floor, with 20 minutes to discuss what you think not too significant. I'm looking at the governance officer, that'd be all right? So you want a motion? No. So we'll just suspend meeting procedure for 20 minutes. That's what we're going to do around this.
So
Righto. Where we go? If you want to be lead, yeah.
just a small thing I want to start with, and I've probably got a few things as others will, but I think when in the ABP, I want to see the fixed charge separated out from general rates like we did last year, just so that number is there for people to see in the document. I think it's been confusing.
That happen. Make it happen.
Yeah, it's my first one. I'll let others have a turn.
Councillor Arthur, you ready for a turn? Or
Well,
I heard your voice, sorry.
Hard to sit here now. We didn't know this was coming up, to pick and choose what you want to do. So I'd like to move a motion.
Well, not at this point because I've suspended meeting procedure, but I think we're in the collecting of ideas and positions point of view.
Well, my motion will be that the council provide the elected members of the budget review with an increase of only 10% in the rates, with the unmade roads and sealed roads being exempt from any reduction.
All right, so I'm going to leave that as a foreshadowed motion, as much as you and me know you shouldn't do that. So to assist this process, assist the process, and I ask you what you would like to take off expenditure or off income.
Well, until we get a full resume, like for example, salaries. Like I've been looking at a lot of other council salaries, and we're right at the top.
No, well, I'm not going to.
We are. You talk about Tatiara. Tatiara's got a standalone library. We haven't. They've got 2 Olympic swimming pools. We haven't. You go to Berry Barnwell. They've got standalone libraries and all this, and they've got a lot less employees. I'm sorry. And I'm not. It's nothing about staff at all. About the individual staff. I think it's about we've got to. In any business, you've got to have a look at your costs. Now, our costs for what we're proposing here since 2021 to now is $1.2 million
So councillor,
increase.
as you know, some of that's due to different ways of recording things.
It doesn't matter.
They're still there. I accept their costs are there, but they are in different categories now.
Well, if it has been there, it's been hidden what the
No,
actual
I-
costs are to the council.
I don't accept the word hidden. I'll accept that there's in different categories.
On that subject, Mayor, though, the categories, the response we were given wasn't the different categories. It was EBA negotiations, the existing 2.6 carried over. It was the two awards that had to be looked at. It was the proposed new staff at their own cost. So there was a breakdown that we were given. It wasn't that the categories were changed. It was the staff that had come on.
I think when you
and the new
compare
system.
to last year, which was the old accounting system, there's been category change.
Also back
and-
then it was categorized
and,
differently.
Yeah, and then there's also category change as a result of our auditor pointing different categories to what they're using. There's also our audit and risk committee were, want of a better word, happy with where we're at in presenting this budget. But not saying there hasn't been growth there. Saying is the way it's viewed on paper is not, it's not apples and apples show.
Just in that answer to you, in that email, councillor Roundtree, there was some amalgamation of some costs that last year would have been separated out. I think I detailed some of those in the answer. There were category change.
You know, but just finish up on what we're going
Yeah.
on. The proposed budget has an increase of around about 14%. Depends on which way you look at it. It's 12, 14%. But it's also
It's
got
set on
another,
around 13 for somewhat of a accuracy.
it's also got another 12%. So it's actually 25% if you include going to borrow $1 million. Now, if you wanted to run a square budget, you'd have to raise the rates by another 12% to cover that $1 million that you're going to borrow. So, you know, like that is not.
So I'll come back to where I
not
started,
good
councillor.
business sense.
Well, I'll come back to where I started the debate, is that if you want the capital extra items in that budget, a normal part of, sure you after being in Canberra for a week, every council in Australia is dealing with exactly the same problem we're dealing with in the next couple of weeks with budgets, is if you wish to go on expanding your capital or improving things, as in upgrading roads or whatever we do, no one has found another solution. Now, I'm not arguing it's the right solution. I'm just saying there's no other solution. Now, they're long-run assets we're proposing in this budget. I'm just saying that. We're not alone. Guarantee you we're not alone.
I know that. Yeah.
No. But so to say it's a 20, it's not, that's a bit unfair, I think. Because we are actually paying off the old debt. It's not as though we're not paying off debt in this process. Can I go to Councillor Maiden? Sorry, she had her hand up next.
Thank you, Mayor. And through you, I just have a question regarding the amendments, and I would like to actually see a workshop or a discussion about the written submissions separately because we may come across with some amendments, but we're not going to get them done today. So I would like to suspend question or number 2 until we've had the workshop. I don't know how we go about that because I'm trying to
I
learn
only
the
see
process.
two ways,
but-
and I don't know what the timetable for next Tuesday is. You could have a workshop prior to the meeting. But I would also, or you could have a workshop prior to the meeting. I think legally. But I'm taking, I've got a potential motion coming at 4:33.
Yeah,
That if that was, and I was to accept that in a little while, was to get up, it may allow everyone to understand what that potential motion does to the budget. Miles, thank you.
The difficulty with a workshop prior to the meeting to adopt the budget is that we won't have time to make adjustments in the documents that you need to adopt. That will take, depending on the changes, should council desire changes, it will take, a reasonable amount of time to make changes in the budget. So, whilst I understand.
So if, thank you, Miles, but the point I'd make is if potential motion was to get up, I suppose, by close of agenda Friday, those adjustments, that proposal could be considered. And if you wanted a workshop on Tuesday for that to be explained prior to a fairly full agenda, that would be possible. You'd need to understand that that workshop could not propose further changes. Workshop could not propose further changes. Am I going wrong?
But through,
Couldn't propose further changes without adjusting the adoption of the budget date.
couldn't we have a special meeting to do this? If we had a workshop, couldn't we then have a special meeting to adopt the budget?
We could, but where are the timeframes?
But if we're doing it, when does this have to be done by? I mean, what is our latest we can have this done?
Depends whether you want to practice or.
Or just legislative? Because none of it's good practice, is it? But,
15th of August.
okay, well, then we have time. We have time to be able to spend some time on this matter and get it to the July meeting.
And I just, sorry, Your Worship, I just want to point out another matter in terms of, at 30th of June, as it delays the issuing of rates notices and cash flow into the organisation, which is quite critical. So I want you to be aware of that as well.
So there's a considerable amount of statutory timeframes from the adoption of a budget to the ability to issue.
Follow-up.
Can I ask a question why, Mr Mayor? Because other councils don't actually finish their consultations till the end of July. And the first rate notice is not paid till September.
I don't think there's any councils haven't finished their consultation now. In fact, they're all going
There
this
is.
week.
Who I Who?
Can I just ask a question, if I might,
I'm
Mr
going
Mayor?
to get control of that and go to you.
Good, thank you. And that is that, from what I'm hearing is councillors, including myself, would like another workshop on tidying up or clarifying some of the budget issues and some of the items in there. And if the intent is that we want to decrease the increase percentage, then we need to have that and be happy to own that as councillors. By having a workshop next week and then delaying, having a special meeting in the first week in July, is that impossible? And it's a week out, but is that a problem?
Short answer is yes, councillor.
It's a problem.
No, it would be possible.
I mean, it's a week out on the 30th of June. And I don't know if that fits up. Try and work in with staff and also allow staff to get on with moving forward with business, then is, and I don't know the answer from other councillors.
Yeah, I would
Whether-
take on board that, you know, this would be part of option 2.
Through you, Mayor, I feel a little disappointed that I've been wanting to do this for such a long time. Last week, on the 13th, we had the community grants review and the Murray Coorong Trail. Not that I'm saying we shouldn't have these things and do those workshops, but in my mind, this budget one was more urgent and possibly our time could have been spent then working on that instead of those two items and moving those items to July.
2 of us weren't here, was probably the first problem last week.
Well, I can pick another date.
Yeah,
That's just the
well-
one that was previously closed. But my point is, I feel like I've been asking for a while and I feel very constricted now that we're being told we're going to do all these things that are not so great because of the timelines when I don't think I'm alone here in wanting to have this opportunity.
Right. So councillor, what I'd say, and councillor Peach, I'm on to you next, is that some months ago, we did discuss with councillors the general amount of extra income to council. And that ended up at approximately 10% as a general discussion. Now, I understand your distress or discomfort around the other figure in the budget. I understand that. And, you know, we want more time to work through this process. We can. I would, you know, simply say there's some good governance issues around doing it. We went through this 4 years ago, if anyone remembers. So I wouldn't want it to go on forever that we're not sure of this. Or we are relatively sure of our figures. It's just how much of an increase you feel we can impose on the ratepayers, A, and how that will affect the long-term financial plan and a SCOSA's review of us in a year or so, B. Things need to be looked in the context of that, and the future rate increases you are effectively kicking trouble there, didn't I? Kicking down the road. So I'm going to go to councillor Peach.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a question to start off with and then a couple of statements to make. Something we discussed a little while ago in terms of a dramatic change from last year was the internal charges dropping. There was an indication that that might change coming into this period. Is there a movement?
You may, it's one of those areas that we look at all the time to see what is reasonable. So it is generally a point in time figure.
Is your estimation of the reasonableness of the 197 figure, is that going to vary upwards or down
I think it'll probably vary up a little bit.
within the range of where it was last year, or
It was about 800,000 last year.
838?
I don't think it'll be as high as that. It'll be somewhere probably, and I'm going to look at the director here, but if I said around 400 to 500 is probably where it probably will sit, unless Matt will tell me something different. It'll be less. No.
So would we reasonably presume it may double to 400?
Look, I could sit here and say that's reasonable, but at the end of the day, we really won't know that figure until we've finished the end of August.
That could have. So
Mayor, the other thing that's going to have a bearing on our figures is the announcement late last Friday that all of the fags will be paid this financial year. So that is a moving feast always at this time of the year.
You had a couple more.
I do think, Mr. Mayor, I do not believe that increasing the rates to the percentage we have and having a deficit to the size we have is acceptable or sustainable. On a personal level, I won't be voting in favour of a rate increase that's anything further than CPI plus 1% plus the actual growth of 0.51, which would be 8.51%. I also believe we need to cut costs somehow. And I would probably prefer to put a cap on spending that is less than where this was proposed to, without anything further, without any, just setting a dollar figure and staying with that. That has prompted a significant conversation in the community around the percentage increase year to year. And I understand things have been shifted. But I do think we need to trim this somehow.
Okay. That's all of your statement? Okay.
Mr. Mayor, can I just one of the comments about trimming. It's how this is presented to me, and I asked the question today, 900,000, is that the net or gross? That's the gross figure of expenditure on plant and equipment. So it could only be 600,000, could be 700,000,
No,
net figure.
somewhere on the other side of the budget,
But
councillor, there'll
is
be
a
some
net-
income.
It's a net figure that we
Okay.
want to know. What is your actual expenditure? The other thing is, what's happened to the fund that was supposed to be set up, the reserve fund for plant and equipment? It's been, 3 years we've been talking about it? Still
Talking
hasn't
about it.
been done.
New systems just getting in place, councillor. I might just take your point though. But for most of us in other businesses, the way we do budgets is challenging. So there's a full expense on that side, and somewhere there'll be an income of the trade-ins or the sale of surplus.
Mhm.
Take your point.
Yeah, well, another thing is, if you look at the annual general report, the proposed report, we've got externally funding notes and things in there. It's all in there. But $195,000 for the aerodrome at Tindy's not there.
It'll be there somewhere.
Expenditure, 400,000 is, it's the expenditure side there, but the income's not in
I
that
believe it is, councillor.
page, what is it? 19 of the budget. So that $195,000 is not,
I would be extremely surprised if it wasn't in there somewhere.
well, look at the page, yeah, here it is.
Bill on screen, you might want to welcome you, Bill. Can you just answer that where the 100?
Carcoma Road, 1.05,
Yeah, well,
Voltally, local roads.
how about we let the accountant tell us where it is? Welcome, Bill.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you, Mayor. I think what councillor's referring to would be the income from the capital side. I'm just referring to the income statement about actually towards the end of the income statement, there's 2 million that's come through the capital side of things.
So does it include that amount for that grant for the Intinara Aerodrome?
Yeah, it's clustered up with a lot of other things. It should include everything that was provided.
You're very confident it's in the system, in the budget.
Well, maybe in the system, but it's not noted here. And it's, like it's only 200,000.
Well, it's not only 200,000, it is 200,000. Sorry to tell you. Okay. I'm sensing that the councillors, you've had foreshadowed a motion. Councillor Peach has given us some guidance on where he thinks he would be prepared to vote for a budget. Anyone else wants to in the next 2 or 3 minutes? Councillor Coleman, I'd appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, I concur with Councillor Mayman and Councillor Roundtree. They show concerns that we need to, as you would say, Mayor, bash it more into shape. And I feel now we just received those submissions, we need a workshop on it, because as far as I'm concerned, that's good governance. Good governance is getting this right. And good governance is, of course, sustainability, but also our ratepayers have been paying too much in rates for years. And now they're facing extra costs, and of course we are, and we just got to try to keep a lid on. Maybe we've got to act smarter. And like Councillor Peach said, we've got to seriously maybe look inward. And I agree, and I'll be supporting the 8.5%. Thank you.
Okay.
I have a question. It was something that was just raised before about the wages and not comparing apples with apples. Is there an opportunity during this workshop so that we're clear in our mind about what is the actual real increase, that we could see what was, because it might be that original starting number was actually a lot in real terms. If we basically, can we compare apples with apples? Can you provide that?
So through you, Mayor. So the email I sent, I think around the 25th of May,
Yeah, okay.
doesn't explain that well enough.
Well, it says where the categories were from, but it doesn't say the amounts. Well, not on the 25th of May, unless I'm looking at the wrong one.
I've shut my computer, sorry. I think it's around the 25th of May that I sent you back a response with the little table in it.
Nicely done there, adjustments. Okay, well, what I will do then is I'll take your table and put it into a spreadsheet so I can see it and compare it. Because I guess that's what I find I have to do a fair bit with some of this, is to recreate it into some sort of simple to read spreadsheet that compares it so you can actually see it.
Compares it to what, councillor?
Well, if we've got an increase, we've got this $1 million increase in salary, in employee expenses. And so it looks like it's quite a lot, but I want to see what it was in real terms with a simple number compared to a simple number that says, this is what we spent in the last financial year, and this is what we're proposing to spend this financial year. And if the categories have been moved, it's hard for us to, without putting it into a spreadsheet ourselves and trawling through the documents, to pluck the numbers. It's difficult, and then we might get it wrong when we're plucking the numbers out of emails. So, but I feel that's sort of where I'm at for myself, is to actually to do that so I can see.
So through you, Mayor, remembering that the number that it's being compared to is the adopted budget from this year, and there will be a whole heap of changes. We will be in a position to probably tell you what our end of year final figure is for salaries. Probably at the end of next week, we could give it a good stab. And that will show that it's not the million or just over, that the increase is, that there has been changes during this year that I tried to set out in that document. And so the adopted budget is never the same as where you land at the end. And so then the comparison could be from actuals in 2022-23 to proposed budget for 2023-24.
So how does it work when we adopt a budget, which just seems to be quite critical that we do? We adopt a budget, we get to budget review 3, and we're a lot over in certain categories.
But that's through you, Mayor. That's why we have the budget review process that comes here. Most of the, well, there's two things that will change in the BR 1, 2 and 3, particularly this year, was around some movement between categories because we moved from one system to another. And the other is where there's changes in expenditure patterns that we also then flag with you that there's been changes. There's either been increases or decreases. In the current environment, there have been mainly increases. And so that's to say, moving through the budget process, and this is a fairly standard accounting procedure. Each budget review is to flag that there have been changes in each of those categories from what was formally adopted in the first budget.
But when we, through you, Mayor, when we adopt the budget review 3, for instance, it's retrospective. The expenditure's
Always.
already happened. So what is it, when we don't really have a say over us saying, well, actually, we don't want to spend, we don't want to see the budget go up by that much. What role do we play in that process?
So if there was, generally we'll come back to you with capital, if there's a change in capital expenditure. The costs generally for operational are really the ups and downs of how it works and we don't bring that back to council on a regular basis, but we can do that if you want.
I feel it's through you, Mayor, I find it a bit awkward that we approve and adopt budgets retrospectively, budget review 3 particularly, when it's already
I
happened.
think you've said the word. It's a review, not an adoption.
We adopt budget review
Yeah.
3, we're adopting it.
But it is a budget review, not a budget adoption process.
See us be better at setting budgets and sticking to them.
So what's, through you, Mr. Mayor, what's to stop over expenditure in that case?
Yeah.
If all we're doing is reviewing something after the fact, what is to stop any over expenditure from the budget we've set?
What's to stop any under expenditure either?
That's where you made probably the biggest contributor to expenditure for this financial year is two things. One is the just the increase in prices generally, but the other one is the depreciation changes that we had discussions with you in terms of asset management and the changes in the assets and how the valuations, and that is an area that is going to continue to provide us, I'll say, with some grief because our assets are still undervalued, and when we finish that process, and it's never a finished process, to be honest, we expect that that depreciation figure will go higher.
Okay, now over time, either you extend or we go back to normal meeting procedure.
I'll support that.
If everyone wants to extend for another 15 minutes,
Yeah, why not?
if it's profitable to the meeting, all right, I'll take that as a resolution to go to 4:48. Councillors, is a new time. Councillor Peach was sort of had the floor, but he doesn't want it anymore. by the way.
No, if I may, Mr. Mayor, so the email that the CEO sent out regarding the employee costs did not include any adjustments from categories as I can read it here. It's simply the addition, the expenditure for the inclusions for 23-24.
Yes, but isn't there a dot point right towards the end that talks about the amalgamation of some costs?
Nope.
There's another email then.
Sorry, reallocation of salary costs, but in terms of the actual the budget figure you start with plus all the additions equals the end figure. Yep. So there's $550,000 in new employee costs in there between the 4.6 positions.
So an average cost of a staff member with on costs is probably, depending, inside is probably about 120 to 130,000, outside staff probably around the 100,000 mark.
So the contract position,
Will at some point.
project
be
position,
capitalised.
is that a permanent ongoing?
It's a contract position, 2 years.
2 years.
2 years? Yes, 2 years.
Projects that we've had funding for.
I want to,
No, I'm going to get a councillor Bland because she's the next one to
just-
indicate.
Listening around the room, we've got 10% thereabouts, 8.51%. It's a significant drop from 10 to 13.5. Has to be adjustments to be able to do that. So therefore, we're still needing to be able to have time to go through and make those adjustments. And how that might look also for staff to make recommendations. If we go with anyone, I can't see how we can achieve that today without, seriously, I think what we need to do today is decide on that figure, whether it's 10, 13, 8, 11, whatever. I think we need to make that decision today. And then all of them have impact no matter which way we go and what are we prepared to live with or not live with.
I don't disagree, councillor. There's three ways it can happen. Cut projects, positions. You decrease revenue, or you borrow more money.
And I think
So when we resume at 4:48, take a motion from the floor to give the staff some guidance, we form something for a workshop.
every one of those are big decisions, whichever way we go with the workshop.
Yeah.
It'd be nice to have money tree to say that. you know,
We haven't got a money tree.
everything we want, but we don't have that, and we need to be rational about it, and that will impact on us having to do more work.
Don't disagree on the options available are narrowing, they're still there. And when we get to 4:48, at a foreshadowed motion, maybe a reasonable start for the debate. Staff can go away and provide you with the options of what would have to come off the budget. You'll be cognizant of the long-term financial plan at this point, cognizant of a SCOSA, cognizant of the future outcome as has been described to us in earlier workshops. They can do that for you.
CEO able to tell us that Brenda's gone with 10% in our local area. There's others as well. Just trying to. Everybody has their own reasons. Have to have it. Yeah.
So through you, Mayor, the different areas of council that and it was a perfect opportunity last week to talk with my colleagues. In South Australia, the range is probably from, apart from the city councils, which are different again, but generally around about the 8.5 through to about, I think one up in the Cape, oh no, in the wrong state, up in York Peninsula is around about the 11.5. So, and anything in the middle.
Keep in mind that we probably did not increase the rates over the previous 3 years at the same rate of others.
I'm aware, but one big hit's very hard to, that's our.
I'm going to go to councillor O'Hara next. He's been very quiet.
Yeah,
The mic, please, Mick.
I've sort of just this in and I thought we'd nearly agreed on 10% at some stage. And we're still looking at losing $1 million next year. So if we want to go to 8.5, well, I'm not going to vote for 8.5 unless we make some cuts somewhere so that we don't lose more than $1 million. I mean, otherwise we're just chasing our tail. So we are going to have a workshop. We have to make cuts on.
So in the motion
Services.
that may come after in a few minutes, you may give direction around 8.5 and 10, and the staff may present options on what you lose at a fixed amount of still deficit at those 2 points. But is that where you're heading?
Are we looking at borrowing in that as well?
Absolutely still can. You're taking a reasonable amount of money out of the business and still proposing, unless you don't want to go ahead with some of the capital projects. I might make this point about
Nothing's off the board right now, is it?
well, I'll make the point about the capital projects, most of which do have
Funding it.
attached to them. I would be very reluctant to give up something which we've nearly already got funded from another partner. Doesn't change the operational deficit. Thank you for that. But so if we talk about the debt level we were taking, it is for substantial amounts of new capital, as in new things that we haven't got now. Councillor Rountree, though.
So when we're having this workshop, it would be really useful to see all of the expenditure or the categories. So when you, as I was saying to you before, when you presented that pie chart, had the areas of where the money goes. If they were the headings and under that we had some of the bigger items that are our most expensive, but also indicating what are the legislative things that we have to do that are not optional. And also then the items that have already got grant funding attached to them that we don't want to lose. It would be handy to know from our perspective what those things are and what is the discretionary stuff that we can look at whether we want to do or not do this year or move. And it's a cringy subject. I can see the cringing. Mayor, it is cringy to have to do this, but like Councillor Hara said, we do need to, we are going to have to cut some things here because I don't think our rate base can cope with a 13.5% rate increase with everything else that's going on. And I accept we're going to have to cut some stuff, but I don't want to cut something or that might have funding attached to it. But I also don't know the full list of all of those things. I could go find it because I'm sure you've presented it to us, but it would mean going back now and spending considerable amount of time putting that into some sort of spreadsheet so it's in one spot so we can just see it clearly together.
So am I taking it that the figures as presented are as they are? So to make a lower rate increase, you want to know what the staff's view on what you should lose. I want to be really clear that you would like the executive to present you with what do you lose for each percent you lose?
Well, I
Or
think
what they think we can
that's-
afford to
that's-
lose, right?
well,
That's what I want to be
that's the
clear.
issue. It was not so much what they think. I'd like them to present to us all the options so that we can make some of that decision as well. Like it's one thing for the staff to suggest what we should not do, but I would like to know all of the options so that we can consider them. Because what if what the staff choose to cut out is something that we don't think is reasonable?
Well, they'll present
We
the
might
options.
pick something else.
Well, just be careful what you wish for. They can present you with the options. That will be your choice.
Yeah, well, this week
And I don't
we're
think
deciding.
somehow get a decision out of 7 councillors eventually.
Hmm.
But you will have to sort that out amongst yourself. Now, the only way forward I see at the moment, and the governance officer, she gives me that look, is it possible by next Tuesday for a workshop to present that sort of percentage?
It's probably not the governance officer's call, it's probably
No,
more
I know, but
Bill's call in terms of reworking the figures. And we can present basically a drop down,
sliding scale.
and also we can bring to you, rather than the top level figures, we can drop that down to the next level down. From what I'm hearing by councillors, I don't think that's granular enough. I think unless we give you the 2,000 lines, I'm not sure you're going to be satisfied with what's in that budget. And there are about 2,000 lines in the budget, just to be clear. But we'll find a middle point and we'll now remembering that it's not capital costs. So Councillor Arthur's comment that you don't touch the roads, that's a capital cost. That's not going to change your operational very much at all. It might in terms of a little bit of, in fact, in terms of staffing and costs that are associated with it, but generally that's a capital cost, so that's not going to change. If your concern is about the amount of revenue and the deficit, that won't work out and make things happen. When you're thinking about operational costs, you're thinking about, do you still want your 50,000 in community grants? Do you still want the 2 positions that we've put up as extra positions to help the organisation? They're the types of things that are operational costs, not the actual building of a road or most of the projects that have attracted grant funding.
So through
It
you,
helps
Mayor.
cash flow if you don't do those things, but it doesn't help with your operational deficit.
So just to clarify then, through you, Mayor, when we're given the list of projects like we were today, and it shows you the roads that we're proposing to do for that, so we've got the carryover items and then we've got the new items, why would we not go through some of those, or are they all grant funded and we can't touch them? But why wouldn't taking some of those out of the budget reduce the overall spend of the organisation?
It does reduce the overall spend, but it's capital spend. It's not your operational deficit. There are 2 very distinct parts to your accounting, and Bill can probably explain this much better than I. But the capital expenditure is about cash flow and it's related directly to what your depreciation is. And we are spending above depreciations because we have a backlog of capital as we talked about this morning. But the operational, which is the day-to-day running of the business, it's about the salaries, it's about the, just the community costs that we bear every year, how you pay your fuel, those types of things. Most of that is operational. So changing what you do with the roads is not going to change your revenue base significantly, and in turn doesn't change the operational deficit or.
When you use the bucket of money concept and you say this is the amount of money we need to run the organisation, do these things, and then that then drives the rate, how much we want to increase the rates.
Yep.
There is a correlation between those things and then how much we want to put the rates up to achieve that end. Now, if we don't need to achieve 13% to still do all our capital, then why are we charging 13%? Like, why don't we just do it 10%?
Because there's two parts to the business, is that think about the depreciation figure as informing, that's your cash flow in the operational, and that informs your capital spend. So then park the capital spend. The operational then is the salary, basically, deficit, your materials, goods and services, and your depreciation. So they're the three biggies, and generally the mix is about 30%, and that's probably where we sit most of the time. The capital then takes care of itself. It's a cash flow issue about spending the money, but it's not a issue in terms of the operational deficit. Bill, can you explain it more simply than that?
Yeah, I can give it a shot. It's correct. What Bridget's saying is correct. The two distinct parts, capital is not going to hit that bottom figure, that $969,000 deficit. Capital, you can keep on spending on capital and keep on choosing to reseal roads, and that $969,000 deficit will not change, but you will just be dipping into your cash or into your loans to fix the capital items. And that's one issue. The other issue is the operating side, which is where the deficit lays. And that's where Bridget is correct. This is where, and my personal view, because I see these thousands of lines, I think you'll be struggling. I'm happy to provide what we can to the level of detail that you need, but some of the things that you'll see is electricity, water. These are all very fixed costs that council is getting charged for. There's contractors. I think maybe there might be some scope in there, but my overall opinion is I think you'll struggle to reduce your costs without reducing services. There'll have to be some type of service correlation to the cost, because right here, like I'm just sweeping through some of the expenses here, just to give you some examples. We got computer license and software fees. They're contractual. There's server requirements. That's just one example. You can't eliminate a cost like that when you've got you're in contractual agreements to pay servers, to pay software providers. You'll struggle to eliminate a cost like that. Then you have fuel, oils, lubricants, insurances. They're pretty much, the insurances are pretty much mandated through the LGA. They provide these figures and we just have to pay them. Marketing and advertising, that's not where the big bucket of money sort of sits. Professional services, legal fees. Yeah, I think you can. We can provide something, but I think you could probably trim somewhere. But I think it will be a difficult exercise. But I'm happy to provide a list. The only thing is, if I can backtrack a little bit, is I think there'll be implications in getting this data with an extra workshop and the timing of the rates going out and cash flows. I think you'll be entering into another scenario where there might be delays with rates and a few ongoing issues in terms of the rates notices and when they're due and fines and interest. All these dates will sort of push out and there'll be cash flow potential issues.
I'm going to let Councillor. Thank you.
Bill,
Councillor
can I
Arthur,
just
have
ask-
a brief question, then we are going to return back to the normal debate.
But can I just run a couple of scenarios past you? You know, things that I look at the budget and I ask myself, what agencies fees, $500,000? Computer license.
Landscape levy, 460,000. It comes in through the landscape levy in revenue, goes straight out the door.
So it's not really 500, it's whatever we get, whatever we charge out as per budget time. That's the landscape.
Yeah,
levy, right?
mostly landscape levy. There are other bits and we can identify them, give you dot points to
No,
it,
that's fine,
but
if
yeah.
that's what it is.
Yeah.
Okay, but we got contractors discretionary, 900,000, contractors statutory, 900,000. Then we got,
Yep.
fuel oils, I know that, but then we get down to repairs and maintenance, $1.3 million. You know, for repairs and maintenance, obviously, you know, that's buildings, I'm thinking that's buildings, vehicles, the whole works. Hell of a figure for, you know, like a company that runs pretty new vehicles. And unless
It
there's
might
been
be.
some major
Make some
reconstruction work going on that we don't know
Let's
about.
not make some assumptions about what those categories are. I'm going to.
Well, that's what I'm
I
asking.
can-
You're asking us to say that's all right.
No, I'm not asking you to say it's all right. I'm asking that we make assumptions about versions of what's in the category. Right. I am going to turn us normal meeting procedure, and there was point 2, any amendments to the business plan arising from the written submissions be included in a report to council at its ordinary meeting. Now, I'm of the view now that the chamber wants to make some amendments to the business plan. The way forward, it appears at this stage is for you to give the staff some direction right now around potential changes in the business plan for a workshop next Tuesday prior to our standard council meeting, and the budget part of that council meeting be deferred until after that workshop at least. But noting what Bill said around the timeframes of cash flow. Is that a summation that everyone's comfortable with? So my next question is, can someone move a motion that a further workshop be held based on X increase revenue and something along those lines? Right,
Mayor, can I just ask a question prior to
Quickly.
that? If we have this workshop on Tuesday, can we not move the budget that night
No.
that says
No,
including, no? Okay.
no. You have a formal agenda that comes
Yeah,
out on
fair
Friday night, and
Yeah.
you can't then just change something prior to that. Councillor Peach.
I have a question if I may, Mr Mayor. If I may, through you, Mayor, the CEO's comments about the granular data, that is what I'm looking for in considering this, so I do appreciate that. The question I'd like to ask through you, Mayor, is the SCOSA has made it clear that they will be taking a dim view of rate increases over inflation. What in through you, Mayor, of those either side of you, the balancing between that view and alignment with long-term financial plans, has the SCOSA given any advice around that?
You mean? No, but I think that if we had been a council, and lots of councils are struggling with this, had reasonable rate rises that reflected the long-term financial plan over the last 5 years, then they would have a dim view of a rate rise that was outside the CPI. Our long-term financial plan actually says CPI +1. However, we were a council who last year rate rise of 3.5%, and in the environment we ended up it should have been around about the 5 or 6% to have covered costs, but crystal balls doesn't work.
How did that,
So
the 3.5% through you, Mayor, the last 2 years rate rises, for instance, how did they relate to CPI in those years? Yes, I understand that,
Separate
but
to that
do you know what the CPI was for those? I haven't looked it up, I'm sorry, but those 2 years?
Depends on that. Is there someone prepared to move a motion to make us move forward? Councillor Mayman,
move the, as is, that we do a workshop prior to the next council meeting next week.
You're reading it as it reads there,
Yep,
councillor.
that a further elected member workshop be held based on,
Yep. And do you wish to nominate a potential midpoint starting point for rate increase?
I would actually like to see the next 2 years at 8.5 on prediction at that workshop. So we were talking about a 10 point, or say 13% or 13.5% this year and then decreasing it. What I'd like to see is 8.5 this year and just a projection so I can make a decision for the adoption of this business plan. But I don't think we can do that today because we don't have the.
No,
thing.
we're not going to do it today.
No.
Can't
So
we?
that's, I would like to see where we stand after 2 years.
You'd like to
of
see the modelling based on
modelling of that
2 years
at
at
that
8.5
workshop as well.
compound.
Fit with that in the long-term financial plan.
So
Because
do
that's
you
what we did in the budget review and, but we did it at different rates.
The modelling is probably, and Bill, tell me if I'm wrong, but the modelling is the easy part, but then how do you get to that figure from a revenue collection point of view? We will rely on your advice about what you want in and out of the budget, because as we stand, and as Bill said, the operational costs, which is basically the driver of the organisation, there is very little discretionary spend in there.
Yeah, Matt,
Just an example on discretionary spend is things like street sweeping. Operation of waste transfer stations. Patrol grading roads 4 times a year, not 6 times a year. Not tree trimming road verges or slashing road verges 3 times a year, only once a year. That's the type of situation we need to address. We need to say, when someone from the public rings up and says, we want our road patrol graded, we say our level of service needs to reduce to meet the budget requirements. We can't do that. That's the challenge. We're going to make decisions on level of service, which the community don't want to pay for, but also don't want us to deliver.
so,
We can provide that information.
Yeah.
But that's the reality of
so,
this.
so for every percent in rates, we'll probably be able to receive advice on what we'd have to give up. I think is that a realistic proposal? I'm sort of trying to get, so we can get to a point where we understand each other. Billy, you want to say any more? Or
Yeah, if I could, Mayor, if I could just add to some of the examples that Matt just mentioned, I've got some as well. It's Chubb Fire and the WHS requirements around that for fire safety. There's pest control, mapping services, which we use through rates and for assets, hygiene services, septic pumping, pump repairs, the list goes on. If you start to cut in those areas, then this is what I was sort of alluding to before. They're the things that I can see. If you start to cut in those areas, I think, I think it'll be difficult to cut a lot.
Ask a question. And that is, we have a number of things that have time frame over a number of years, subject to grant, particularly in the roads, capital works. I realise that, but is there any potential if they were actually slowed down?
That's who you met. Generally, if there's a grant involved, there's also milestones and a end date where we have to have complied. Now,
Are we
we
ahead
know
of-
that sometimes we don't, but I think as a strategy of not doing it would be frowned upon. The funding organisation will understand if there has been delays because of contractors or supply or the various things that do change the end date, but I'm not sure it would be appreciated if it was actually a strategy.
The other-
Probably the short answer is no. If you ask, are we in anything?
Are we ahead with any of those contracts? Are we further advanced than we thought we would be at this point in time?
I would say probably not. Some of them were on track, but generally I wouldn't say that any of them are ahead of. We tend to match the workload to the milestones in the particular project.
I'm going to take councillor Maidment's motion as moved, but I just think for the purpose of clarity, it's based on a 8.5% rate increase for 2 years. I think that leaves a lot of people to interpret that as only a maximum over the total of the 2 years. My understanding of your motion was 8.5% in 23-24 and a further 8.5% in 24-25.
It's,
That's your intention?
that's what I want to look at,
Yeah,
whether
no,
I
I-
want to,
I-
yeah,
I
vote
read-
on that. That's what I'd like to
I
look
read
at.
that as an average punter. I thought that went only 8.5% over the 2 years.
Could I, that to me, sorry, Mr Mayor, question on that. If I read that as a ratepayer, I would make an assumption that we're going to do that. If that came out that that would look like
Assumptions are
that.
very
Is there a
dangerous.
way of changing the 8.5% in the 24-25 to say possible, a further possible? Because it's only possible, the council will make that final decision in the next financial
And a
year.
possible further 8.5%
Possible
in
further, if
24.
councillor Maidment
Word
is
possible
happy
in
for
that,
that.
councillor, you happy with that?
I-
Just in case it's misinterpreted.
I know it can be misinterpreted.
We probably have 0.2 around projects.
I mean, we may not need it, but I'd like to see it projected.
I'm going to take the motion because we need to move. Is there a seconder to the councillor Maidment's motion before she speaks to it? Councillor Roundtree, seconder. Councillor Maidment, you want to speak to that worked around a bit?
No, thank you, Mayor. I think I've said,
You've probably
and that
said you
reads the way I want it to be, so thank you. No.
Thank you, councillor Roundtree.
No, I've said enough, probably.
Anyone else wish to enter the debate around that proposal, which takes us to some more work being done by the staff and then a workshop hopefully next Tuesday before the council meeting?
I have a question,
Yes.
and the question through you, Mr Mayor, is to councillor Maidment. Can we also put a 0.2 in about doing a 10%?
I think you can, but what I would think will happen is
I
it'll
just
be
don't want to
shown
delay it
what-
next Tuesday.
what you lose per 1% at $100,000, what you lose
Yes.
in terms of operational projects vis-a-vis.
Okay.
So.
We'll work on that figure.
I think you
Okay.
better work on that basis at this stage. Bill, you've got your thing. I don't see your face on the screen. I've got to be told.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. It might be a little bit off track, but I think it's relevant. But I think if there's a workshop next Tuesday and there's changes at the workshop, you won't get a budget on Tuesday as well. We'll have
No,
to
not
take
if-
away. Yeah,
There's no intention of that, Bill. Sorry. The
okay,
whole budget proposal that would have gone into this agenda by Friday night won't happen.
okay. Yes, thank you, thank you.
Can't
Just
see what we can
clarifying.
do, 'cause we're still.
The following week.
So the only thing I'm informed as is just part of this debate is you could do fees and charges in. Is that, you're happy to do that this next Tuesday, but not anything else in the substantive part of the budget? Plenty of other reports, plenty of other work, council, not the budget process. Okay. Anyone else wish to speak for or against the motion, please?
Mr Mayor, just.
You're speaking for or
while we're
against,
going
councillor?
through this,
You've got a question or what?
It would, the CEO be happy for us to send Director Bill some questions about the split down of the expenditures? I'm just saying, for
Oh,
example,
I-
the $727,000 we pay on legals and
I
other
think
sort of things
We
like that.
still go through the CEO, I believe.
Okay.
I think that's the only appropriate way at this stage. Anyone else? Councillor Peach, yes,
Part question, part statement, if you'll indulge me.
let's start with the question.
The question I asked before about the CPI increases and versus rate increases, I've just gone back and looked it up. Now, I'm aware this is the Australia CPI, it could be slightly different for here. 3 years ago, it was negative 0.3. We increased rates by 3%. Outside the long-term financial plan. Year after, it was 3.8. We increased rates by 10%. It's only last year that we've been substantially different. And on aggregate, by increasing by 3% when we are not that far off of the long-term financial plan.
That's what you mean.
you read that one on, that on my head's getting fuzzy now.
So the CPI that we've worked on over the last 5 years, including the one coming up, 1920, the previous CPI was 1.8 and the rate increase was 3. 2021, the rate increase was 0, and the CPI was 1.8. 21-22, the rate increase was 2.
Sorry, excuse me. So 2021,
Rate increase was 0.
the financial, the adopted business plan says it was 2.
That's the 21-22.
The adopted business plan says it was 3.
22-23 is 3.
Between 3. Okay, I'm sorry if I'm out. So it was 0 increase in 2021.
2 in 21-22. And 3 in 22-23.
What was the 19 one?
3. And the CPI in those years, 20 is 1.8. 2021 was 1.8 the same. 21-22 was 0.9. 22-23 was 3.5. So that's up to the current year.
Can you send that through? Can I get a copy of that?
Yeah.
I think one of the things
We need to be speaking for or against the motion pretty soon. You can speak for or against. Yeah, which way you want to go there, whatever you want to do.
I think one of the big problems we've got is we've gone from a low interest inflation rate to an exorbitant inflation rate. And the biggest problem we have got is when I was looking at the budget for roads, for example, that 40 odd kilometres of roads, we probably would have put in at $1.6 million. But now we're putting in at 3.6, we're putting it at $70,000 a kilometre. And as the Director of Infrastructure and Assets has pointed out, the increases for the cost for roads, particularly sealed roads, has just escalated, which has escalated our costs. Like it is a catch-22 situation. We're probably a little bit lucky we're not paying high interest rates for our borrowings, although they probably were high a few years ago. But, we've got to get away from that 1%, 2% inflation rate. And, hopefully it'll get down there in probably another 3 or 4 years, the way things are going.
Through you, Mayor, that's a very important point. And when CPI is measured, it's on a basket of goods, which is generally at the supermarket. Most of the stuff that council buys is not your basket of goods at the supermarket. It's the things that have had probably anything from 12% to 25% to some increases around fuel, cement, all those types of things. So it's not like the CPI is reflective of the things we buy generally anyway.
What is Bill would know this, what is the SA council's inflation rate? Because they have a special rate for councils.
You want to have a go at that, Bill? You remember the CPI for councils, and is it one for city and one for country from memory?
We'd have to have a look.
Yeah, that is correct. I'd have to look it up though, and take it on notice, but I can definitely find it.
Yeah.
And it's always a fair bit higher than normal inflation.
So just quickly, I'm going to start winding this up, but both the directors are going to have a brief statement.
Just really quickly on that figure, that isn't released as the general CPI, so I've tried to look that up. There's not a fresh figure on that. However, construction materials CPI has been around about 20%, 20 to 25%.
Matt?
Yeah, thank you, Matt. Just on what Councillor Arthur mentioned, the cost of construction not only has gone up because of inflation, but it's also gone up in regards to the type of road and the construction that you need to provide to be fit for purpose for current usage. That is a significant increase. So for example, when we're talking about $50,000 a kilometre for a resheet to $70,000 a kilometre, that's driven by things like the construction of Carcooma Road and the like, which require a deeper pavement and greater structural stability to withstand the freight that it's taking. The other thing that's really important to understand is that our depreciation expense is growing because of revaluations not occurring historically and accurately. So our assets currently at book value are undervalued, and that is going to be adjusted and rectified over a period of time. That is going to increase our operating expenditure and what is reflected in our deficit position. That is really important. We could continually undervalue our assets, and that's when a SCOSA comes along and whacks us on the fingers. We have to value our assets and manage them accurately and appropriately. And that is one of the core reasons why our current position in this financial or the next year's budget is where it is at because of depreciation.
Thank you. I'm at the point to speak for or against the motion I have. Councillor Mayman, you get to close.
I close. Thank you.
The councillors, everyone's clear. I'm going to read the motion. Move councillor Mayman, seconded councillor Roundtree, that a further elected member workshop be held with modelling provided based on an 8.5% increase in rates in the 23-24 financial year and a possible further 8.5% rate increase in 24-25 financial year prior to adoption of the final annual business plan and budget. Everyone clear?
Can I ask for clarity that we are understanding rates to be the entire period, the entire figure?
Rates in this
multiplication,
council is considered to be the capital rate and the dollar and the fixed charge.
and that there won't be a growth charge on top of that. That's what I'm getting at. But the modelling is about an increase to rates. Yeah,
Total.
the total was it, so because I think that's what we're thinking. That's what we're asking for.
That's my understanding of the motion. Everyone's ready? I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Those against, that's carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors, for that discussion and that. Now we just move to the second item, number 3 of this agenda, please. Cash advance debenture. Councillors, there's a recommendation there. There's an explanation in the report. I'm prepared to move it.
Can we just have some more
Clarification.
clarity around that?
Yeah, the CEO will, or she'll ask someone else.
So
Give me a bit of
remember, we
clarity.
said to you a couple of weeks ago that we were intending to combine the I think from memory, and Bill will help me if I'm wrong. And some of them are due to expire over the next couple of years, and it's probably a more efficient way that we start to combine them, but we can't apply for the new one until we actually get a motion from council.
Just on that though, are we combining, how I read it was that we're actually borrowing 7.3 million.
So we,
5 plus the 2.3.
the old ones will slide out as they become due.
And how long will that be until they slide out?
So I think we gave you a list of those in the last council meeting report. Bill might have them on memory, but I don't. And these haven't been activated at all for the last couple of years, but they are a really good backup option, particularly if we have an issue with cash flow. And if we're going to delay the rates, then we may have to activate these.
5 million is like an overdraft facility. You're only using it as we need it, but we already, so we'll have 2 separate facilities to start with, 2.3 million and 5 million.
In fact, it's more than 2.
5 available.
Yep, so the existing ones will just go through to finalisation.
Yep.
And this one is the start of the process to have one combined one. Bill, did you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, thank you. Through you, Mayor. That's correct. The $2.3 million overdraft facility that's currently in place will just run its due course. There's a new application, as it's kind of like a bank application, and they want to see this document endorsed by council as part of the loan document, so to speak. It's just kind of like a bank application, and they require it to be endorsed as part of the application process. The 5 million is on top of the 2.3. It'll be easier, and given the environment and also cash flow potential issues with delays in getting rates out, but also with the ambitious capital program as well, it's prudent to have a $5 million, like a beefy overdraft sitting on the side there. Given the uncertainty with the rates, the timing of the rates, and the environment, what we've just discussed.
So through email, I'm getting the impression that there's every intent that we will use that 5 million.
Expenses are high if we have a delay in rates. We have particularly the 2 big road projects. As I think I said to you a week or so ago, I've got a $1.6 million road invoice sitting in my inbox. No, we will use that one. We'll use whichever one's got the lowest interest rate, to be honest.
Yep.
Until we have the amalgamated product. So the ones that have got a maturity date, we'll just let them go through maturity, but if we can use them and they have a lower interest rate than the new one, we'll use the lower interest rate one.
You want to move, councillor, or you got a
I
question?
just got a question.
Yep.
Thank you, Mayor, through you. Just, could you explain to me how debentures work? I'm not quite sure.
But for those of you in business, just think of it as an overdraft. You dip into it. The money comes in, your overdraft goes away. You dip into it again, you use your, so it's really just a very fancy name for an overdraft.
Do it against assets of the council or a business?
I'm saying no to that, and Bill, I'm looking at you, but it's just, it's an overdraft, similar to any other.
The old, do it against the rate in the dollar, wasn't it?
Bill didn't hear you.
Do you hear me?
His Bill's off mic now. He's,
Sorry, I didn't, I missed that bit, sorry.
so what is the loan, in whatever form council borrows, secured against? My understanding is secured against the rates.
Oh, it depends on, it's subject to each application, but, just to talk about the 5 million, the LGFA, which is the Local Government Financing Authority, this is when we spoke about the potential to lodge an application for an overdraft, and they recommended we lodge the 5 million on the side on top of what's currently there. This was their recommended approach to it, and just to add that bit to it.
We did have a presentation from them in this chamber, I think, 6 to 8 months ago in this council.
Yeah, that's correct.
Well, I'm looking at the new ones. Yes, must have been. That answer your question, councillor.
Does,
Looking
thank
for
you.
someone prepared to move this motion. Sun's gone down. Councillor Arthur, are you moving? You're just nodding like you're trying to buy something at a clearing sale. Is there a seconder? Councillor Bland is the seconder. Righto. Is there any further discussion required on that councillors authorise the application for an additional cash advance debenture facility through the Local Government Finance Authority to the value of $5 million? Everyone understands that? Closing, councillor.
Yes.
Thank you. So I'm putting the motion as it reads. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. That gets us to the end of this meeting. I think we'll be in contact with you, but at this stage, I think we're working towards, do we have any other workshops next Tuesday, Ashley, prior to the? They're not in our diaries, so some of them may be
Well, yeah.
deferred.
Mr. Mayor, outside of the meeting. Okay. So the council.
We're not outside the meeting yet, sorry. Just give me a second. So this workshop, we're trying to work it into next Tuesday.
I've had the comments.
Yep. So the additional workshop, we'll try and schedule probably at 9:30 or 10 o'clock, I reckon.
Just on that subject though, what are the external ones we're having presented next Tuesday?
Why? Because
So
we've
what,
been
who
scheduled.
are they? What are they?
I don't know. Right, so there's 2 proposals.
Can we defer those though? Because I
Well,
don't see
that'll
them
be
as important as what we're about
No.
to do.
The RDA is important, we consider.
Why is that one
We
important?
can,
We consider.
yeah, we can. look at-
We will seek.
Both of those.
Well, see how we go.
Honestly, I don't want to start so early or whatever, if it's gonna, we can't get there. I would just rather be as get it done rather than have any other deadlines that we have to work to that day.
Okay,
Well, there was nothing in the diary at the moment. so-
okay. Anything else? I'm going to close the meeting because I haven't closed it yet. I'm
I thought we
declaring the
were
meeting closed, Ashley. At whatever time it is.